Hey, it's James from Marketing for Restaurants here, and welcome to episode 83 of Secret Sauce, the Restaurant Marketing Podcast, Restaurant Leadership Lessons with Carrie Luxem.
Some restaurants are quiet, lose money, and the owner works 70 hours a week. Other restaurants are busy, profitable, and the owners work a few hours a day. What's the difference? They have a secret sauce. Join James from Marketing for Restaurants as he helps you come up with your recipe for restaurant success. Your secret sauce.
Haha, welcome back everyone. How did you go with the last 3 episodes? We managed to squeeze the 4 Ps of restaurant marketing into 3 episodes of the podcast. If you're struggling with profitability, if you're struggling with getting enough people through the door on the quieter nights of the week, definitely have a listen to those 3 episodes because I think we covered off on some really interesting ways that are probably a little bit unconventional in regard to the way that most people think about restaurant marketing. Super excited about today's guest. We've got Carrie Luxem, who is the maven of restaurant HR. So, Carrie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, James. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, do you want to tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and your area of expertise?
Sure. I work with restaurant only. So I have a company called Restaurant HR Group, and we support restaurateurs by handling their payroll, benefits, and HR administration. And then I have carrieluxem.com. And with carrieluxem.com, I'm basically on a mission to help independent restaurateurs and HR professionals with helping understand the complexities of HR. And I'm doing that through articles and videos and on-demand training and different things like that through a membership platform on my website. So I kind of have both businesses.
That's really cool because I think HR is one of those things that is so badly understood by so many restaurant operators.
Yeah. It's exactly why I'm doing this. I think of things very simply, and I think that everything that happens in HR with people, it can be communicated in a simple manner, and it just doesn't happen very often. So what happens is operators don't want to deal with it because it's usually confusing. And so what I'm trying to do is just really break it down. I talk about things a lot. I put a lot of stuff on social media to just constantly teach operators basically everything they need to know from culture to recruiting, hiring, and essentially all the way through the life cycle of an employee through termination and what it means to build great systems in all those areas and how do you do it and how do you attract, hire, and keep and develop great leaders. That's really where I'm focused.
Because that is one of the big tricky things. So the first question then would be, how would you define leadership?
I would define leadership, I hear a lot of people talk about managers and leaders, and the term leadership is thrown around a lot. But for me, the real difference is, as a manager, first of all, both managing and leading is both very, very important. But managers are really focused on the things in the restaurants, and certainly that's important, the tasks, getting things done. Leaders really invest their energies into people. So leaders use their skill sets to inspire and influence people. And so, great leaders tend to initiate a deep-rooted emotional response that they get from their people. And that's intentional, So the real definition that I have is that leaders, they influence and inspire people and get results that way.
And I think that's a really good definition. It gives people something that they can understand what it is that they're meant to be doing in a restaurant.
And I think the best managers and the best chefs, they may be really good at managing their restaurant and managing the tasks. And again, it's really important to do those things. And they're motivating their people through having these systems and dealing with those. But the really great ones focus on becoming a better leader. And I'm sure we'll talk about how to do that and stuff later. But that's why leadership is just so important to care about because it matters.
So how do you think the restaurant industry goes compared to other industries as far as leadership development?
I've never been in another industry, so I've only been in the restaurant industry my whole life. But I do think there might be some more effort put into certain industries when you're in a corporate setting, or if you're, just in a different industry in general, there's more time and resources that are allotted to soft skills training and how to become a better leader. There are some restaurant groups that put a lot of time and energy into this, and, as groups evolve. But I think when you're an independent restaurant or even as you're evolving and you open 15, 20 stores, it's really, the focus is put on managing the restaurant really well. And so I don't think the restaurant industry has a lot of focus on soft skills training and what it means to really teach people how to be great with people. How do you manage and lead teams? How do you get the best out of people? So this is another thing I'm really focused on. There's not a lot of energy put into this, not a lot of focus on this. So it is important. I see so many operators get promoted from a unit level manager to multi-unit. And as a multi-unit manager, you need to be a better leader. And because they've never really had the training there, they fail oftentimes, So to answer your question, I think that the restaurant industry has a lot of room for improvement and focusing on spending time with operators on soft skills, people skills, and getting better in those areas.
It is interesting that you mentioned the difference between a single location and multi-location, because in some respects it's quite similar. In other respects, they're almost worlds apart, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you.
One of the other challenges that restaurant owners or the people making the decisions that they struggle with when they think about, should we be making an investment in leadership? You run a marketing campaign and you can work out how many more burgers you sell or how many more pizzas. What's the return on investment in leadership training?
Oh, geez. It's huge. It's if you invest in training people how to deal with people. And what does that really mean? It really means focusing on building great relationships. How do you do that? How do you manage conflict as a manager? How do you personally grow and develop? And so there's things that you can do when you think about building relationships. So talking to operators and teaching them about how to do that. Authenticity is so important here because I'm an HR person, and sometimes people think when I'm talking about leadership, everybody has to be charismatic and act a certain way and be really over the top. That's not what it is. You got to build great relationships, and you do that by being very authentic. I know some of the best leaders I know. They are, chefs, and they're serious and they're introverted, but they have a lot of respect from people. They understand how to inspire the teams that they have and that sort of thing. So, I think it's a huge miss if you're not focusing on teaching people how to build better relationships and how to manage the day-to-day conflict that happens naturally. Part of being a restaurant manager, a restaurant owner, a chef is being able to handle people. And that's everything that we're talking about. So you've got to be authentic. I'm a big believer in being positive. Positive energy. Who wants to be around negativity all of the time? So, doing things and providing tools and training to teach people how to do that and to show that you care as a person. I work with some really serious and, some would call them like old school operators, but when they really truly care about their people and they do it very authentically and they have people that are loyal to them and they treat people with respect and kindness, and they may get upset and they, that's the reality. People run businesses. Bad things happen, but if you are good at getting people to understand that you care about them and that you respect them and you're really skilled at building relationships, it's going to be so much better for you. And then on the managing conflict side, James, I've been in this business for a really long time, and it's amazing to me. I'll meet shift leaders or assistant managers, general managers, multi-unit managers, franchisees, owners of these companies, and the lack of being able to deal with the conflict that happens among people, it's mind-blowing. They don't know how to handle certain things. They don't like to have these confrontational conversations. Or you've got somebody who is very aggressive. They come off very, some people might call them mean or disrespectful, but you've got to learn how to essentially coach your people, mentor your people. And so you've got to be able to deal with the conflict that happens. You've got to be able to have direct conversations and deal with these difficult people encounters that are going to absolutely happen no matter where you work.
There's a lot of really, really good points there. The tricky bit, I think, and once someone gets on board with the fact that, that leadership training is worthwhile and I think is probably fundamental to the success of their restaurant.
Yeah.
What process is it that you take when you're trying to build up a leader or a team of leaders? How do you go about growing someone like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You said leadership training a few times. I mean, what does it really mean? I mean, there's different ways to develop somebody as a leader. And, I think about the partnerships that we have with people and what we coach a lot of our operators to. When you have somebody that's naturally really good in an area, you can partner them together. So one of the strategies is not just a training workshop, having workshops and doing these training events. That's really fine to do those things. And I'm involved in a lot of workshops, but you get stuff out of that. Those are very motivating for the day, but the day-to-day stuff, you really got to invest every single day in mentoring your people. You've got to incorporate certain things that are going to have them, maybe it's role playing or whatever it may be, to teach people how to deal with the problems that happen, the people problems and stuff. Entering that into the into the management training program. If you look at a lot of the management training programs, it's very, very hard skills focused, so incorporating some of these tactics, different books they can read or doing things that have them step out of their comfort zone when it comes to dealing with things with people or leadership, surrounding your people with other leaders. Those are all the really good things that are going to help people develop into better leaders, challenging them to handle things outside of just the hard skills.
That's a good point. What role does culture play in leadership?
I think some of the best restaurant operators I know, they have sort of a coaching mentality. It's like they're going to take ownership of going out and recruiting the best players, their people that they can. They take full ownership of that. So they really care about who they bring onto their team. So they're slowing that process down. They're finding the right team, the right person, putting them in the right places, if you will.
Yep.
And then once they've recruited a team, they take a lot of care and compassion and put a lot of effort into making sure they have a winning team. And if they don't have a winning team, they take accountability for that. Those are the ones that win. The coach owns it. The coach is accountable for it. And then, obviously a sports coach knows that just because you won, the World Series doesn't mean you're going to win again next year. So you've got to try new things. You got to have new strategies. And so restaurant operators that think like that, they win because they're always trying to improve every day. They're focusing on not only improving their restaurant operations, but they're improving their talent. They're improving the team. They're doing things to make sure everything works together very, very well. So I think having a coach mentality, being a daily mentor to your people, making sure you're hiring people that have the management and leadership have that same mentality is key in having success in a restaurant.
Because I think in a lot of respects, your job as a leader is a lot better if you've got a great team behind you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the tricky leadership roles are where you've got a dysfunctional team or a culture that's not working too well.
Right. And when that's happening, it's a leadership issue. When there's a broken team, I have seen many, I was with Potbelly for a really long time, and 3 restaurants when I started, over 220 when I left. And even looking at each of the units there, if you looked at them as an individual restaurant and, you'd put a manager in one restaurant and it would be failing miserably from the sales side to, just people, everything. And you put a new manager in there that sort of thought more like a coach and, was a better leader, and the store would have more success over time, because it's really about caring about the restaurant, caring about your people, understanding that you as the leader of the restaurant are accountable for all aspects of the success.
Absolutely. Do you think that for someone who's either invested a lot into a restaurant, like financially, and is the owner but not overly hands-on, or for the chef in the kitchen, can anyone be a leader in a restaurant?
Yeah, that's another good question. You got a lot of good questions, James. So, I do think that everybody has the capabilities of emotionally connecting with people and being good people. And that's how you inspire people. I don't think everybody necessarily has the skill set to own multiple restaurants. There's a lot that goes into that, and how what kind of skills you have, and if you can lead, if you're charismatic enough to lead, inspire a full room of people and all that. But I do believe everybody has the capabilities to inspire other people to run a successful restaurant if they care enough about it. Now, I've met a lot of hardcore operators and chefs that really despise dealing with people. And my feedback always to them is, hey, you're a great chef, or this is what you're good at, finding new restaurant sites or whatever it is. Figure out what you're good at, and then hire that person that is going to complement you, that does like to hire great people and does like to rally the team. Really understanding, being very self-aware, being yourself. You don't want to take a chef who can't stand dealing with people issues, make them deal with it and expect to have success. It's just not going to work. But that doesn't mean you can't have a successful restaurant group. You just have to, I run a really small company. I'm not restaurants, but I run my own small company. I know what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. And if I tried to focus on the things that I didn't like to do, I would be miserable every day. People wouldn't want to be around me, So
it's not fun when you're doing things that you're not good at. And on top of that, It takes so much longer.
Yeah, you're right.
There's less time.
Energy.
There's less time in the day to do the fun stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. What would 3 books be that you could recommend to people to get a better understanding of leadership?
I'm not a huge pick up a big book and read it. I'm more, I will tell people they could absolutely, there's so many different articles out there, following people on LinkedIn and stuff like that. But I do there's a book that I enjoyed that one of my very successful restaurant clients turned me on to. It's called Rework, Rework. And it's a business book, and it's very, very quick read, which I think a lot of restaurant operators like quick reads. That's why I like reading. That's why I do a lot of posting and short articles and short videos, because people don't have the time. But that's a really good, very interesting way to look at business. I am a fan of Chick-fil-A, which is a very successful brand here. And there's a book called It's My Pleasure that I really enjoyed. It's about talent and about culture and things like that. And then I'm a big Simon Synek fan, and I love Leaders Eat Last and Start With Why, and all those books are really great as well. And if you're not a reader, you can find a lot of his stuff is on YouTube, and there's just different ways to absorb and, get the benefit from some of those things without having to actually sit down and read the entire book. Or you can do audiobooks too,
Yes,
if you don't like to read. So
for someone who's listening to this today and they think, we've got some significant team problems and that they haven't been doing their role as a leader, what are the first steps that they should take in trying to turn things around? Because we see that all the time. You just, and when you go into a restaurant, you think, wow, front of house isn't engaged. Back of house, if they had any pride in the work that they were doing, they would never have dished this meal up. That things aren't going well in the restaurant. How would you've just come to the revelation.
Yep. The place isn't working well. First thing I would do is look at the leadership team, whoever that is, if it's the owner and the manager or whomever is really leading the charge. Do you have the right dynamic there? Because I see all too often, the servers are terrible, the back, everybody's terrible, but the leadership stays the same, and it's always the same problem, So if that dynamic doesn't work, so you've got to look at that first. And listen, if the guy owns the place, he's not going anywhere, maybe he could really think about, if, like we were talking about earlier, he doesn't like handling some of this stuff, or that's not what he's really naturally good at, could he find somebody that could complement him and start to get the most out of people? Now, if you think that that's great, you've got some great people and they're just trying to figure out how to motivate their team and they're not sure how to do it. There's a ton of stuff. First and foremost, just really making sure that you are hiring the right people. So are you sourcing in the right places? Are you diverse enough in your sourcing efforts? Are you getting a pool of candidates? If you're placing an ad in one place and you're hiring the first 5 that the best of 5 that, show up and they're not really that great, but that's all that came in, then you really need to spend a little more effort on your recruiting strategies and figuring that out and really understanding who it is you're looking for. And so you've got to look at the recruiting process and make sure that you're doing what you need to do there. Now, if your culture is broken and you're an awful place to work and nobody wants to be there, you're going to continually have issues recruiting and hiring great people. People want to work with brands that have a good reputation and that they want to work at. So I would check the leadership, see how that's working. If everybody's in the key places there, I would take a look at your recruiting strategies, make sure you're doing enough different things. Do you have a process? Are you slowing down the process? Are you asking the right questions? Do you know who you're looking for? What's important in a server's job? Do you have that defined? How do you measure their success? Making sure that you have all of this stuff that's communicated and asked during the recruiting process. Then do you have, is the onboarding process, is the orientation, is that done? And, that sets the tone. It doesn't mean you have to spend 4 days doing it, but you've got to have something that you've taken some time and some effort and really communicating your culture and the expectations and getting everybody to work together as a team and all that stuff. And then, of course, the training program, you've got to take a look at that and make sure that's great. But if you have an operating restaurant and everything is miserable and you just are trying to figure out, well, how do I just go in and fix it? I mean, you got to start talking to people, finding out why they're not motivated. You've got to set expectations. You've got to hold people accountable for the expectations that you set. And I know that's easier said than done. People say that to me a lot, which of course everything is, right? Everything's easier said than done. But you have to, if people know that they can come to work and not be nice, then they're going to come to work and not be nice, But if you create a culture and you have an expectation, it might be a little hard because you're short staffed, but it's better than having 25 people that are running around miserable and 15 people that are actually wanting to be there and you're working hard and they feel great about it, but you've got to find other people that are going to be part of that. So, it's just really hard every restaurant's very different. Everybody's situation can be just slightly different. But if a restaurateur consistently has problems with their staff, it is almost always, in my opinion, a leadership issue.
Yep. So if you're in this situation, you've come in, probably the most difficult decision I think that you need to make is, should you persevere with someone or fire someone?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts around that? How do you sort of make that decision about this person should not be in the restaurant, or we can work
or
with
should
this
they
person?
not? Yeah, I mean, I think if we go back to talking about what we were talking about earlier, like the coach mentality, listen, you want to do everything you can to ensure somebody is going to be successful, and you've spent all this time to recruit and hire this person, right? So you want to give it an effort. It depends. How toxic are they? If you've got a really toxic employee, you need to get that poison out of your restaurant, obviously. Is there something other than that? I mean, so it really comes down to communication, James. I mean, you've got to have open communication. You've got to know what's going on with your people. If you have somebody that is underperforming, of course, do everything that you can to get them to be a great performer. Dedicate some time and energy into doing that. If you have done that, you've given them the time and it's not fixing, they will know that, hopefully, because you're giving them that feedback, constructive and otherwise, But if you have a person that's just absolutely poisoning your restaurant, and they're, obviously you don't want to keep that person on your team.
Because it drags everyone else down on the team.
Of course. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and when you keep, a lot of times when there's issues with turnover and culture, you've got some rock star employees, but you've got a handful of underperformers. And when they're not held to the same standard and they're not held accountable, people get tired of that. They don't want to stick around. So.
And I think the scary thing is that you spend most of your time managing the underperformers, which means that your rock stars don't get the loving that they deserve.
Isn't that true? That is very true. Mm-hmm.
And then they leave, and then you think, oh God, now I'm left with the B team.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about vision? How important do you think it is to have a vision in a restaurant? What size restaurant does a vision sort of become necessary, if at all?
I think it's important if you're going to start a company, you're going to start a restaurant or any company, to really understand why you're doing it, starting with the why. I think it's really a good practice to do it as early on as you can. If you're already an existing restaurant, you haven't put any thought into what you're really in business for, I think it's absolutely a good idea to do that. Like, why are you existing? What are your goals? That's part of how people connect to what you're doing. So I find it to be important. I do know restaurateurs that don't put a lot of emphasis into that, and they have success. So I definitely don't think it's an absolute must for every single person, but I do think people that can communicate their vision and their mission and their goals and their dreams and their aspirations, they're a step ahead for sure. So I think take the time to do it for sure.
I think it helps with hiring as well, and retention.
Oh, for sure.
If people have got a bigger reason than just coming along for a paycheck.
Right.
It helps you when you have those dark days in your time with a company, and everyone has them. It gives you that little bit of an extra reason to work that little bit harder.
Yeah. And if the vision and the culture that you desire is really what it is, I mean, sometimes people spend crazy amounts of time creating all of this stuff and it's not real, it's sort of fairy tale-ish and it doesn't relate to the restaurant at all. And then people aren't going to connect to it. It's just writing in the handbook, it's just writing on the wall kind of a thing. But if you really have a vision and the actions that you display every single day are in line with your visions and your mission and your values, then people will be connected to it. If you just spend time doing it and you think because you've defined it, that's going to make a difference, it just doesn't.
Do you have any tips on how to come up with a vision?
Yeah, I've written a lot of articles on this. There's definitely a bunch of different ways that you can do it. And, I don't know if I can provide you with some stuff that you could include a link
definitely.
or something.
Yep.
Yeah, that might be a really good thing to do. I do some step-by-step things on how you can exactly defining vision and mission and how you can go about very simply writing this out and defining it and making it a reality. So I'll provide you with that for sure.
That would be awesome, because I think it's the foundation for building a company. You hire based on it, you attract people for it, you retain people for it, you exit people because they don't share the vision and don't fit in with the culture. So those things are really, really important, but it's one of those things, and there are too many. I've seen people who go to these one-day workshops and they come out and say, this is our vision, this is our culture, these are our key values, and it's like...
Yeah. When you do this, when you define this, it tells you who you are, what you're doing, where you're doing it, why you're doing it. And those things are important, so it is important to kind of create these statements, these vision statements and mission statements. But then again, it's much more important once you've defined it is to really live it, to really live it every single day. So I'll definitely send that to you. That'll be helpful.
Outstanding. Thank you. Now, have you got any
Sure.
final tips on how people can be a better leader?
I mean, I think that you, as a leader individually, I think you just have to focus on becoming a better leader. And how do you do that? You got to, read a lot, like read about other leaders, read about successful restaurants, surround yourself with successful people, challenge yourself to do those things that are uncomfortable, whether it be having that tough conversation or having an event or doing a retreat or something like that. And, just constantly focusing on how can I be a better coach and a better leader and a better mentor and have more success. If you put the effort in and take the time to do that, it'll definitely pay off. Step out of your comfort zone once in a while. So yeah, I think those things will be helpful. And of course, they should all follow me because I give them lots of tips every single day. James, okay? Make sure they follow me.
I will. Oh, now that was the last thing I wanted to talk about. Just very quickly, you're incredibly successful on LinkedIn. I found you on LinkedIn. What's been your recipe for success with LinkedIn and how much of a difference has it made in your business?
Yeah, well, so I've been on LinkedIn for, I think it's been around 10 years, but when I was operating Restaurant HR Group only, I didn't do a lot on LinkedIn because I didn't want to get too much exposure and get too many clients and then our operation would fall apart. But once I started on this mission to help independent restaurateurs over this has been 2 or 3 years now, I've been very active. So what I've been doing, my success really comes from, I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. So I post multiple times a day. I put out quick little updates, whether it's compliance-based or a leadership tip or, something that happened with a client. And I just give information. I do articles. And as of like the last 6 months or so, I started incorporating videos because LinkedIn has videos. That's been a real differentiator in terms of, that's been a key success for me in adding video to my LinkedIn. But I think that why I've had a lot of success on LinkedIn is that I really just focus on adding value.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about likes and shares, and I don't, that's not what I focus on. I really focus on, okay, I've got this world that I love. My mission, we talked about mission and vision. I mean, my mission is I'm really trying to make the world a positive, happy place in any way that I can, through my content so I talk a lot about positive energy and not giving up and that sort of thing. I'm trying to play my part in helping develop leaders, and I want to help as many restaurateurs as I can have success. And so with that mission, I've seen the amount of success, and I get so many messages from people saying, oh, that little segment you did or that article or what you provided, it helped my restaurant or it helped me save an employee or whatever. And it just fuels my motivation for it. And I just continue to do it. So that's how I've had success, is that I just really am focused on helping people.
Outstanding. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
So
it is. I love it.
I'll include a link in the show notes to your articles on vision, because I think that's really important, and a LinkedIn profile so that everyone can follow you and get their daily dose of how to be a better leader and do the HR piece, which is so important in every company.
Definitely.
A little bit better.
Great. Yeah. And I've got, on my website or on LinkedIn, I have hundreds of articles and videos, and they're all categorized in the life cycle of an employee. So it's basically under the categories of recruiting and hiring and onboarding and culture, leadership, safety, loss prevention, performance, termination, the whole 9 yards. And so they can, if they're on my website, they can go in and specifically look at those categories and find the videos and the articles that correspond with those categories. So, and then I'm also releasing a book on March 20th. So I finished my book. I'm actually getting the copies, I believe, tomorrow. And we're releasing it on March 20th. And it's all of what I just talked about in terms of those categories. It's a playbook. It's called Restaurant Operators HR Playbook. And it ties into all the stuff that we were talking about today.
And you're getting the books tomorrow. That's really exciting.
I know. We're tracking it. We're so excited because we're tracking it down, and we're think it's going to be in my office tomorrow. So we're hoping, and then we'll have those available, and we're excited. We've already had a ton of pre-orders, so we're really excited about this.
Cool. Well, we'll include a link for that because I'm sure it'll be a really good book in a topic that just so many people struggle with.
Yeah. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your time today.
Awesome.
Wow, how epic is that? So many great ideas and so many things that we can do to be better leaders of our teams. So thank you so much, Carrie. Really, really valuable. Check out the show notes, everyone, because I'll include details about how you can get more information from Carrie, and I'll also include some details on where you can buy her book, The Restaurant HR Playbook. So that's about it. You have an outstanding day. Bye.
Want more customers for your restaurant, cafe or takeout? Every month, our marketing tools and information are used by thousands of restaurant owners just like you to help them find more customers and turn them into repeat customers. All of our tools and information is designed specifically for restaurant owners. We know you don't have a lot of time to spend marketing or learning complicated procedures, so our tools are quick and easy to use. If you're looking to increase your revenue and profits or want to work less hours, check out marketingforrestaurants.com.